Do you know who I am?
I don't give a damn. But I know what men like you want, and it's not respect.
Do you know who I am? The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something dangerous has just been said out loud. She looked at him, set her phone down, picked up her drink. I don't give a damn, she said. And that was the night J10 met the only person who would ever make him afraid. Not of dying, but of losing something. If you've been here before, you already know we don't do ordinary stories on this channel. And if this is your first time, you picked the right moment to arrive. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so every new chapter finds you first. Then settle in, turn up your volume, and don't make any plans for the next 45 minutes. This story doesn't wait for anyone. The night soul breathes is different from the night, you know. It doesn't settle. It doesn't quiet. It crackles at the edges, neon bleeding into wet pavement, bass lines humming through the soles of your shoes, the low rumble of cars moving like they own every road they touch. It is a city that does not ask permission. A city that was built by people who understood that power is not given. It is taken, worn, carried like a second skin until the first one forgets it was ever bare. Silhouette Club sat 42 floors above street level, tucked into the upper deck of a tower that cost more than some countries earned in a year. It was the kind of place with no visible sign on the door and no need for one. If you had to ask how to find it, you didn't belong inside it. The walls were smoked glass and brushed obsidian. The lighting was the color of whiskey held against a flame. Amber at the edges, dark gold in the middle, and black everywhere else. The music was low, not timid, just controlled. Like everything in that room, it existed at precisely the volume someone had decided was appropriate. Not a note louder, not a note softer. At 11:30, the elevator doors at the far end of the lounge opened without a sound. The room didn't turn. It shifted, the way water shifts when something heavy moves through it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but inevitably. Heads dipped toward conversation partners with a little more focus. Shoulders rolled back. Laughter landed a half step earlier than it should have, just slightly too performed. Because J10 had arrived. He was 34 years old and carried it like a warning. Not tall in a way that demanded attention. He was simply tall in a way that made everything around him look smaller. He wore a black suit cut so precisely it seemed less like clothing and more like architecture. Notie. Collar open by exactly one button, and that single detail, that one concession to something less than formal, somehow made him look more dangerous than if he'd been fully buttoned up to the throat. His hands were in his jacket pockets. His gaze moved across the room the way a camera pans across a landscape. Smoothly, without hurry, missing nothing. The four men who followed him in remained 2 steps behind at all times. They were big men, quiet men. The kind of quiet that isn't natural, the kind that is trained into a person the way other things are trained out of them. One of the bartenders set down a glass he had been polishing and reached beneath the counter. Not for a weapon. For a phone. He typed 3 words to a contact saved under no name. He's here. Now. J1 moved through the room, and the room accommodated him. A group near the bar drifted left without being asked. A woman standing near the window, beautiful, draped in red, angling herself to be noticed. Angled away from him instead when he passed. Instinctively, the way prey adjusts without understanding why. Everyone moved. Everyone, that is, except for the woman standing at the far end of the bar with one hand wrapped around a glass of water and the other hand holding her phone, reading something with the particular focus of someone who is genuinely interested in what they're looking at and has no intention of pretending otherwise. She had not looked up when the elevator doors opened. She did not look up now. Her name was Ama Mensah. She was 28 years old, the daughter of a Ghanaian engineer and a woman who had raised 3 children on pure will and a sharp tongue, and she had inherited both. She stood 5'6" in flat shoes. She was wearing flat shoes tonight, because she had been on her feet for 6 hours before coming here, and she had long since made peace with the fact that her comfort was not negotiable for the sake of anyone's aesthetic preference. Her locks were pinned up loosely, a few escaping around her face the way they always did. Her dress was not chosen to impress this room. It was chosen because she liked it. She was reading an article about biomechanics and the science of optimal recovery between training sessions, because she ran a fitness studio 2 streets over and she cared about getting things right. She was, in the context of this room, spectacularly uninterested in whatever had just walked through the door. Jae-won stopped. It was not a gradual thing. It was the way electricity stops, instantly with a small kind of shock. He had been moving toward the private booth at the far end of the lounge, the one kept permanently reserved, the one no one sat in unless he was present. The route took him directly past the bar. Past her. He stopped because she had not moved. He looked at her the way he looked at things that didn't make immediate sense. Steadily. Without impatience. The way a man accustomed to solving problems looks at the one variable that isn't behaving according to known rules. One of his men, the broadest one, with a jaw like a closed door, stepped forward half a pace. A quiet clearing of the throat. A reminder that presence was required. The woman did not look up. Jae-won raised one hand slightly. 2 fingers. The bodyguard stopped. He studied her for another moment. Then, with the deliberate calm of someone who had never once in his adult life needed to raise his voice to be heard, he said, "Do you know who I am?" She finished the sentence she was reading, put the phone face down on the bar, picked up her glass of water, took a single slow sip, set it down. Then she looked at him. Her expression was not rude. It was not afraid. It was not impressed. It was simply the expression of a woman who had been interrupted by something she had not sent for, and was now giving it exactly as much consideration as she felt it deserved. "I don't give a damn," she said. The words were not loud. They were not dramatic. They landed in the room like a stone dropped from a great height into still water, quietly, but with a force that moved everything around them. The bartender stopped breathing. The woman in the red dress turned slightly. The 4 men behind Jae-won went still in the particular way that men go still when they are calculating whether they are about to be required to act and what that action should look like. Jae-won-oh looked at Ama Mensa. He did not speak. He did not move. He simply looked at her. The way you look at something that has just changed the shape of the room you thought you understood. And for a man whose face revealed nothing as a matter of long practice, there was something in his eyes that was very close to fascination. Then she turned back to her phone. He watched her turn back to her phone. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Jae-won-oh walked away from something he had not finished with. The private booth was dark mahogany and low lighting and perfect silence. The kind of silence that other sounds didn't enter unless invited. Minaseo, his second in command, slid into the seat across from him 4 minutes later, holding a tablet and the expression of a man who was deciding how to say something. "The acquisition moved to Thursday," Minaseo said. "The Busan crew is asking for a meeting before then. Tell them Wednesday. And the dock situation. Handled." He said the word the way he said most things. Like it was already done and had been for some time and the conversation was merely administrative. Minaseo nodded. He made a note. He hesitated. "The woman at the bar," he said carefully. Jae-won's eyes moved to him. Nobody knows her here. She's not connected to any of the usual. I didn't ask. Right? Minaseo closed the tablet. Right? But Jae-won was already looking toward the bar again. She was still there. Still reading. She had ordered something. A small plate of something, olives and bread. And she was eating it with the unhurried ease of a woman who had come here for herself and was having a perfectly fine time regardless of everything else going on around her. He had been running the Eastern Operations Network of one of the most significant criminal organizations in South Korea since he was 26 years old. He had sat across the table from politicians and police commissioners and men who ran industries that employed tens of thousands of people. He had been feared, respected, negotiated with, and occasionally threatened by people who were subsequently never heard from again. No one had ever told him they didn't give a damn. Not like that. Not with that particular quality of serenity that meant it was true. He signaled the bartender without looking away from the booth's shadows. The woman at the far end of the bar. Find out who she is. Her name, he learned by the following morning, was Ama Mensa. Age 28. Born in Accra. Raised partly in London, partly in Seoul, which explained the accent that had been impossible to categorize. That flat, confident English delivery sitting on top of something with more warmth underneath. She had lived in Seoul for 4 years. She owned a small fitness studio called Groundwork in the Mapo district, functional training, injury rehabilitation, personal coaching. The studio turned a modest profit. She had 5 regular staff, 12 weekly class slots, and a client review score of 4.9 out of 5. She had no criminal record, no political affiliations. No known associations with any of the families or organizations that moved through his world. She was, by every measure, exactly what she appeared to be. A woman who ran a gym, lived alone in a clean apartment 2 blocks from her work, trained herself every morning at 5:30 before her first client arrived, and had walked into Silhouette Club the previous evening because one of her clients was celebrating a birthday and had sent her a +1. J1 read the report twice, set it down. Then he read it a third time, specifically the line that said, "No known associations." Nobody in his world had no known associations. Everyone was connected to something. Everyone owed something to someone. That was the architecture of the city he lived in, invisible threads running from every person to every other person, a web of debt and leverage and history. She had none. She was just a woman who had looked at him and decided he wasn't worth disrupting her reading. He told himself this was a security consideration, that a person with no traceable associations was statistically more unpredictable than a person embedded in a known network, that it was responsible, even prudent, to understand her better. He told himself this. He did not entirely believe himself, but he told Minacio to keep a loose watch regardless. Groundwork Fitness Studio smelled like rubber and chalk and the particular clean sweat honesty of a space where real work happened. It was nothing like the chrome and mirror performativity of the big commercial gyms in Gangnam. The walls were exposed brick. The equipment was heavy and serious and showed the signs of regular use. On one wall someone had painted, in simple block letters, the words, "The body knows what the mind is afraid to admit." It was a Wednesday morning, 9:42, when the door opened. Amma was in the middle of demonstrating a single-leg deadlift to a client, a woman in her 40s recovering from a hip replacement, and did not immediately look up. "I'll be with you in 2 minutes, she said, watching her client's hip alignment, reaching out to adjust the angle of her pelvis with 2 careful fingers. "Good. Hold that. Feel the tension there. Not there. Yes, exactly." The client straightened up, beaming with the small private victory of someone whose body has just done what they asked it to. Amma turned. J10 was standing just inside her door in a charcoal coat, looking at the space around him with the same steady, assessing gaze he applied to everything. To his credit, he didn't look out of place. He looked like a man who could make himself at home in any room he chose to enter, which was perhaps more unsettling than if he'd looked uncomfortable. "You," Amma said. "Yes. I don't remember giving you my address." "You didn't." A silence. Her client was looking between them with undisguised curiosity. Amma turned to her. "Go get some water. Take 5 minutes. Your hip flexors need the break anyway." The client nodded, gratefully, and with the awareness that she was being moved out of something she wasn't meant to witness, and disappeared toward the back. Amma set down the resistance band she'd been holding and folded her arms. "We're closed for private clients until 11, she said. "Walk-in assessments are Fridays." "I didn't come for an assessment." "Then what did you come for?" He looked around the studio once more, slowly, the way he did everything, and then back at her. "I came to see what kind of person opens a place like this. What kind of place do you think this is?" "An honest one," he said. It was not what she had expected him to say. She could see that he could see that, and he did not appear to be particularly bothered by the slight advantage this gave him. "You need to leave," she said, not unkindly, but without any room for negotiation. He looked at her for one more moment, that same quality of attention, as if he were committing her to some internal record, and then he turned and walked out. She stood in the middle of her studio for 3 full seconds after the door closed. Then she went to get her client. He came back on Friday. He did not pretend it was for a walk-in assessment. He simply arrived at 9:45, when the early morning rush had cleared and the 11 o'clock group hadn't come in yet, and he sat down on the bench near the entrance, a bench designed for people waiting, which he appeared to be doing, and waited. Amma came out of the office with a coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other and stopped when she saw him. "You again. Me again." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she went to the mini fridge behind the small reception desk, pulled out a bottle of water, and held it out to him. Not warmly, not unwarmly, simply the way a person offers water to another person who is sitting in their space. He took it. She sat on the other end of the bench, a full arm's length away, and opened her tablet. "You have 5 minutes, she said. "Before my next client. Whatever you want to say it." "I don't want to say anything yet." She looked at him over the edge of the tablet. Then why are you here? Because you're the only person in this city who's treated me like a human being in recent memory, he said. And I'm still deciding what to do with that. It was the most honest thing she had heard anyone say in a long time. The kind of honest that comes out of nowhere and sits in the air between two people before either of them can decide whether to acknowledge it. She looked at him. He looked back at her. The door opened behind them, her 11 o'clock client, early. The moment closed itself like a book. He began appearing with a regularity that was impossible to call coincidence and impossible to call intrusion. He never touched her equipment. He never interrupted a session. He simply arrived, sometimes with coffee from the place down the road. The good one, she noticed, the one with the single origin beans, not the chain on the corner, and he would sit for 20 minutes or half an hour watching her work and then he would leave. On the 6th visit, she said, "You know you're making my clients nervous." "Am I making you nervous?"
No.
"Then they'll adapt." She almost laughed. She didn't, but she almost did. "You still haven't told me your name," she said. A pause. J1. Just J1. For now. She filed this away. They were standing closer than they usually stood. She had been demonstrating a movement and he had come closer to look, and then neither of them had moved back. She could see the line of his jaw. The small scar below his left ear that she hadn't noticed before, that looked very old, that had not been made by an accident. She looked at it for exactly 1 second and then looked away. "You walk around like you own the world," she said. "Sometimes I do." "What does that mean?" He looked at her. The light in the studio was different from the light at Silhouette. It was working light, no glamour to it, the kind of light that shows you exactly what's there and nothing more. In this light, he looked less like an abstraction of power and more like a person. A person carrying something heavy that he had been carrying so long he no longer noticed the weight. "It means," he said carefully, "that there are parts of the world that move when I tell them to move. And does that make you happy?" He said nothing. "That's what I thought," she said, and went back to work. The Shin organization had been watching J10 for 11 months. They were not from Seoul. They were from Incheon originally, though they had spread south and east over the years the way organizations like theirs spread, through acquisition, through pressure, through the quiet replacement of people who had been in key positions with people who were not. Their leader was a man called Shin Dae-young, and he was 61 years old, and he had been patient for a very long time. He was sitting in the back room of a restaurant that served excellent marinated crab to people who came for the crab and did not look too carefully at the rooms beyond the kitchen when one of his lieutenants placed a photograph on the table. "She's nobody," the lieutenant said. "Studio owner. No connections." Shin Dae-young picked up the photograph. He looked at it for a while. "He's been to her studio 6 times, the lieutenant said. "He came to the club where she was. He sends men to keep a loose eye on her building. And she doesn't know who he is. We don't believe so, no." Shin set the photograph down. He picked up his chopsticks and turned his attention back to the crab. "He has been untouchable," he said quietly, "because he has never had anything to lose." The lieutenant waited. "Find out what she is to him," Shin said, "and then we'll understand what she's worth to us." Amma found him outside the studio at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning, leaning against the wall with his phone to his ear, speaking in a voice too low to hear, wearing the look of a man who was managing something difficult and doing so with the kind of exhausted control that came from years of practice. He saw her. He finished the call. He put the phone away. "You're early," she said. "I had a meeting nearby." She looked at him. He looked back. There was something in his face this morning that was different. Not less guarded exactly, but the guard was tired. She recognized tired. She had seen it in clients, in people who came to her not because they wanted to get fit but because they needed somewhere that the world couldn't follow them. She had learned, over years, to recognize that specific kind of exhaustion that had nothing to do with the body. "Come in," she said, unlocking the door. He followed her inside. She made 2 coffees, she had a proper machine, not a capsule thing, and she ground the beans herself. She handed him one without asking how he took it, because she had noticed over 6 visits exactly how he drank it and she saw no point in pretending otherwise. He looked at the mug. He looked at her. "How did you end up here?" he asked. "In Seoul. My mother's side has family here, and I needed a city that would push back." "Push back. I don't do well in places that are easy," she said. "I needed somewhere that would require something from me." He looked at her for a long moment. And has it? Required something? Every single day, she said. That's why I stay. He nodded slowly. He drank his coffee. He looked at the wall with its painted words. The body knows what the mind is afraid to admit, and he stayed there for longer than usual. When he left, he paused at the door. Someone is watching your building, he said. Not my people. A different kind of watching. She went still. Don't change your routine, he said. Not yet. I'm handling it. He left before she could ask what that meant. That evening, 2 of J1's men changed their rotation. The loose watch on Amma's building became something more deliberate. Car at the end of the street. A second pair of eyes on the alley behind the studio. Nothing that would be visible to a person who didn't know to look. But coverage careful and complete. J1 did not tell Minacio why. Minacio did not ask. He had been with J1 for 8 years, which was long enough to know the shape of certain silences. Instead, he said, the Silhouette event is Thursday. The Tegu group wants to finalize the waterfront agreement in person. Thursday, J1 confirmed. Will you need standard detail? He paused in the doorway of his office. A long, clean room on the 41st floor with a view of the Han River that turned gold and silver at this hour. A room that had never been warm, that had been designed to project exactly the right amount of power and exactly nothing else. She doesn't know yet, he said. Not to Minacio exactly. To himself. Know what? Who I am. A pause. What I am. Minacio was careful with his next words. And when she does? J1 turned back to the window. The river caught the last of the evening light and held it. Then I'll know something true about her, he said. Either way. Thursday night arrived cold and precise, the air carrying the particular bite of late autumn in Seoul. Clean and sharp, the kind of cold that doesn't apologize for itself. Silhouette Club was at capacity, which for a venue like this meant 60 people in expensive clothes generating the low-frequency hum of serious conversation and serious money. The Tegu group occupied one side of the main floor. J1's people occupied the other. In between, the regular clientele maintained the fiction of normalcy with commendable commitment. Amma was not supposed to be there. She was there because her client, the same woman whose birthday had first brought her through Silhouette's doors, had called that afternoon in a state of high social anxiety about an event she'd been dragged to and needed. She said, a steady presence. Amma had come because her client had needed her, and Amma was, at her core, a person who showed up when she was needed. She saw him immediately. He was across the room, standing with 3 men in suits, and the quality of attention everyone in his vicinity gave him, the slight orientation of all bodies toward him, the unconscious deference, was more legible to her now than it had been the first night. She watched the room the way she watched biomechanics, looking for patterns, and the pattern here was clear. Everyone in this room was oriented toward J10 the way compass needles orient toward magnetic north. She stayed where she was. She kept her client calm. She drank water. She did not cross the room. He saw her at 11:22. His eyes found her the way eyes find something they have been looking for without admitting it. He didn't move immediately. He finished his conversation. Then, with the unhurried inevitability of water finding its level, he crossed the room. You're here, he said. My client needed a +1. Again. She nodded toward the woman across the room, who was laughing too brightly at something a man was saying. She's fine. She just needed to not be alone for the first 30 minutes. He looked at her client, then back at Amma. You came to a room like this because your client needed you. That's what I said. Something moved across his face. Not softness exactly, too much weight behind it for softness, but something adjacent, something that looked like recognition. You should have told me you were coming, he said. I didn't know I needed to report my schedule to anyone. You don't. He said it quickly. Precisely. You don't. He stopped. She watched him not finish the sentence. Are you all right? She asked. It was such a simple question. Such a direct, human, unguarded question. He looked at her as if she had said something in a language he had almost forgotten. I will be, he said. That's not what I asked. He opened his mouth. He closed it. The shot, when it came from the direction of the east corridor. Not a shot, not immediately. First, a sound. A crack, contained, controlled, the sound of something purpose-built for exactly this kind of space. Then the east wall erupting in a spray of plaster. then screaming, bright and immediate, as 60 people simultaneously comprehended what was happening and moved in 60 different directions. Jae-won's bodyguards were already in motion, 2 toward him, 2 toward the corridor. The Taegu delegation was scattering. The bartenders were dropping behind their counters. Somewhere a glass shattered. Amma did not scream. She assessed. In the chaos, in the wheeling movement of panicking bodies, she saw him, Jae-won, moving with his guards, moving toward the south exit, and she saw, from the angle of her position by the far wall, what he could not see from his. A man in a gray jacket had come in through the east door and moved not toward the center of the room but along the perimeter. Moving fast and quiet and very deliberately toward the south exit. Toward where Jae-won was moving. He had something in his right hand. He was close, 12 feet, 10, 8, and everyone between them was looking the wrong way or running or down. Amma moved. She had spent 4 years working with bodies, understanding their trajectories, their weight distribution, how they move through space. She was across the distance in 4 steps, not running in panic but moving with the focused efficiency of someone who had made a decision and was executing it. And she hit Jae-won from the left side, low and hard, driving her shoulder into his ribcage and pulling him down and sideways with the full controlled leverage of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The shot went wide. She heard it. She felt the air move above them, and then they were on the floor together and she had one hand on the back of his head pressing it down and the other braced on the ground, and she was looking up to see where the man in gray was. He was gone. 2 of the bodyguards were already behind him. Beneath her, Jae-won was very still. She lifted her head. She looked down at him. He was looking up at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not fear, because fear was not available to him, but something that was its closest relative. Something stripped and unguarded that he had not planned to show anyone. "Are you hurt?" she said. He took a breath. He looked at her. "No," he said. His voice was different. Still low, still even, but with a texture in it that hadn't been there before. She sat back. She took a breath. Her hands were completely steady, which later would surprise her, because her heart was going like a drum. His guards surrounded them both. One reached for her, not roughly, but with the automatic protective instinct of a man whose entire job was the elimination of threats from the vicinity of one specific person. "She's not a threat." Jae-won's voice. Immediate. Hard. "Don't." The guard stepped back. Jae-won sat up. He looked at her. He had been shot at before. He had been in rooms that became violent before. He had been in every variety of danger that his world produced, and he had navigated all of it with the particular cold competence of a man who had learned early that the only reliable protection was the absence of surprise. He had been surprised. By her. "How did you?" He stopped. "I was watching the room," she said simply. "I watch how people move. It's what I do." He looked at her for a long moment. The room around them was still chaos. People streaming toward exits, someone crying, the thud of running feet in the corridor. The only still point in it was the 2 of them, sitting on the floor of Silhouette Club, facing each other. "Who are you?" he said. "You know who I am." "I know your name," he said. "I know where you live and where you work and how long you've been in this city." Pause and something raw in it. "I don't know who you are." She looked at him. "You're bleeding," she said quietly. A cut above his ear. From the fall, from the floor, nothing serious, but present. She reached into the small bag she'd been carrying, found the travel first aid kit she kept out of the habit of someone who spent their days preventing and managing physical injury, and pressed a folded gauze pad against the cut. He held very still. She held it there, her fingers against the side of his head. "My name is Amma," she said. "I came here for my client. I'm a fitness instructor. I used to play rugby at university." A pause. "And I don't like watching someone get hurt when I could have done something about it." He put his hand over hers. Gently, briefly, just long enough to take over holding the gauze in place. "Come with me," he said. "I need to get you out of here. I need to find my client. My people have already moved her. She's safe. Please." She looked at him. She had known, she realized, since she had seen the car at the end of her street for 3 nights running. Since he had told her someone was watching her building and he was handling it. She had known in the way that you know things you're not yet ready to name, in the body first, in the quiet awareness that the shape of your life has shifted around something new and heavy and not yet visible. She didn't know everything yet, but she knew enough. She stood up, She offered him her hand. He took it. The car was already waiting at the building's lower level. A black vehicle, no plates visible, one of his men holding the rear door with the precision of long practice. They moved fast and quiet through the building's service corridors, which J1 navigated from memory, and Amma noted this without comment. He sat beside her in the back of the car. His men were in front. The city scrolled past the tinted windows in blurs of light. She said, "What are you?" A long silence. "You know," he said. "Tell me." Another silence. This one had a different quality, not evasive. Gathering itself. "I run the Eastern operations of the O organization," he said. "Have done for 8 years. Before that, I was being trained for it. I have been in this world my entire adult life." She absorbed this. "And the people who shot at you tonight? A rival group. They've been positioning for months. I knew they would move eventually." A pause. "I didn't know they'd move tonight." She looked out the window. The Han River appeared briefly between buildings, dark and glittering. "The people watching my building," she said. "My people. Watching for theirs. You should have told me." "Yes." The single syllable carrying everything it needed to carry. Not an excuse. Not a justification. Just the acknowledgement of a fact. "I need to think," she said. "I know. I need to." She stopped. She started again. "I have a studio. I have clients. I have a life that has nothing to do with." She gestured between them, at the car, at the city passing in the dark, at the entirety of what the last hour had been. "I know," he said again. She looked at him. He was looking forward, his profile clean and still in the low light. The cut above his ear had stopped bleeding. She had done that. "You knew they were targeting you," she said. "You knew there was a threat, and you still came to my studio. Still. I should have stayed away," he said quietly. "I knew that. I stayed anyway." She said nothing. "I have not." He stopped. Tried again. Spoke in a low voice very carefully, like a man picking his way across uncertain ground. "I have not wanted to stay anywhere in a very long time, and I didn't know how to stop." The car was slowing. They were in a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Clean streets, high walls, the perimeter of somewhere private and secured. She looked at him. He looked at her. "You're in danger now," he said. "Because of me. Because they've seen you with me and because of what you did tonight. They will want to know what you are to me. And what am I to you?" He held her gaze. "The only person in this city who told me they didn't give a damn," he said. "And then turned around and saved my life." She stared at him. She opened her mouth. Outside the car. The street was suddenly very bright. Too bright, and too fast. The driver said something sharp. One of the forward guards reached for something. 3 black vehicles had appeared at the end of the road. Then 3 more, blocking every exit. J1's body shifted, not panic, never panic with him, but the immediate and total readiness of a man who has spent his life knowing this is what the world does. Comes back for you. It always comes back. He looked at Amma. She looked back at him, completely calm, with that specific quality of steadiness she carried like a second skeleton. Not the absence of fear but the decision, made long ago and never revisited, that fear would not be the thing that made her choices. "So," she said. "So," he said. And around them the night closed in. Here is what Amma Mensa knew as those vehicles closed around them. She knew his name. She knew what he was. She knew that the life she had built, the studio, the clients, the 5:30 mornings, the clean and honest work of helping people inhabit their bodies better, existed in a world that had no overlap with his. She knew all of this. Here is what she didn't know. That the Shin organization had been building toward this moment for 11 months. That her face had been in a photograph on a restaurant table 3 weeks ago. That the word already being used in certain rooms to describe her was not nobody. It was leverage. She didn't know that yet. But the night was about to teach her. Part 2 coming soon. And trust me, she's a fast learner. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you. It means everything that you gave this story your time. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who love stories like this one. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. And leave a comment below. I want to know what you thought, what you felt, and what you think is coming next for Amma and J1. Your comments are what keep these stories alive. See you in part 2.